Pokemon Champions hates babies. Do you have a baby? Pokemon Champions thinks your baby should not be allowed access into the competitive Pokemon scene. Are you a baby? Pokemon Champions hates you and refuses to make learning competitive Pokemon easier for you. Also, here's some milk, good boy. I might be fine with this, babies suck after all. They cry and poop all the time and throw up everywhere. But despite this, it's important to realize we were all once babies at some point. And in general, we as former babies should strive to make the lives of our current babies a little bit easier. For a little while, it seemed like that was the goal of Pokemon Champions. Though its marketing never flat out stated that the goal of the game was streamlining competitive Pokemon for newcomers, the implication was always there. In a series plagued by obscure mechanics never tutorialized in an effort to make a fantasy world feel less like a game of numbers, the numbers, in this case the effort values, are explicitly shown to us. We can change them, alter moves, natures, and abilities from a single screen without the use of in-game items. Although Ilka and Game Freak never said streamlining was the goal, the streamlining is what a plethora of competitive players, myself included, were excited for. That and the prospect of not having to grind for hours to get your team where it needs to be. Obviously, Game Freak and Ilka would do nothing to dissuade this hype or temper players' expectations. They might have if they had a soul, but they didn't. So what else is the competitive player to assume other than this game will lessen the barrier to entry for new players? After all, in one of the trailers, we see a little girl thriving in a battle against a greasy-ass man in a competitive scene dominated by greasy-ass men, myself included. The promise of finally getting my brother to seriously engage with competitive battling was enticing to say the least, funneling the scene's intricacies into what looked to be a digestible UI that sought to remove series mainstays such as IVs for the sake of further streamlining things appeared as though it would save me from the headache of teaching him. I was initially willing to look past the competitive implications for getting rid of IVs, but the truth is I should have been uneasy from the start, because the removal of not only IVs, which in the past would often be lowered to lessen confusion damage or make Trick Room teams more impactful, but also the removal of several staple competitive items and Pokemon only served to hammer home in new players' minds that the game's mechanics aren't the only thing that needed simplifying. No, player expression also needed to be simplified for some reason. It's not even that the pool of Pokemon is severely limited at launch. For the past 7 years, Pokemon players have had to deal with their favorites not being included in the game and the many resultant meta alterations. No, it's the fact that I can't choose to use a non-fully evolved Pokemon. Even if they were allowed into the game, the removal of Eviolite plus several other items would make them next to useless. Fully evolved Pokemon have felt this effect. Gliscor is in the game but can't take full advantage of its Poison Heal ability because the Toxic Orb was removed. No Pinch Berries, no Air Balloon, no Expert Belt, no Loaded Dice, no Life Orb, no Power Herb, no Mirror Herb, Rocky Helmet, Ability Shield, Black Sludge, Weakness Policy, Blunder Policy, Lagging Tail, Protective Pads, no Choice Band or Specs, but Scarf is in the game, no Room Service, no Safety Goggles, no Seeds, no Shed Shell when Mega Gengar is running amok, nerfing what doesn't need to be nerfed, buffing what doesn't need to be buffed, what was once a multiplayer experience defined by the insane number of options at your disposal, leading people to continuously invent new strategies, is now presumably drip-feeding the fun part to you. Because let's be honest, the game will continue to be updated over time with quote-unquote new things being added. This is why I don't understand players vouching for items missing. The power creep will set back in eventually, and all the limited item pool is teaching new players is that items are kind of an afterthought. When building teams in Champions, I've encountered multiple scenarios where members of my team are using all the good items, so for my last Pokemon, I just say fuck it and give them a King's Rock or whatever. I wouldn't care about getting rid of some items, but this is a majority of the items. If Game Freak and Ilka were concerned about the sheer number of items confusing new players, they could literally just copy off Pokemon Showdown's playbook and categorize the items by popularity. I, as a greasy-ass man, am not thinking about literally every potential item in the game at any given moment, nor do I need to, but the pool of items I have in my my head is a lot fucking bigger than this. And I want to make it clear, you can make a competitive meta out of anything. This is less so a question of how will players adapt, because we always do. This is more so a question of how much content, strategy, and choice are we willing to let the devs remove from the game before it becomes concerning. You can make a meta out of having only Corsola, for example, but there's a reason that's not the official VGC format. It's also a question of how adequately are we preparing new players for the competitive scene to come. And as I continue to trek through this game, it routinely answered that question with not very. Because despite what most players expected, Pokemon Champions is not a game that is dedicated to introducing new players to the competitive scene.
But it is very likely, in my opinion, that it'll be much faster, and therefore it'll be much easier to get new people to give competitive a shot, which, as somebody who really cares about the growth of competitive Pokemon, I think is a good thing.
Oh, my heart, it hurts. It is yet another game dedicated entirely to monetization and wasting your time. I tried to go into Pokemon Champions viewing it from the perspective of a new player. I attempted not only to forget everything I knew about competitive battling, I also initially refused to bring in any of the Pokemon I've accumulated from my 25 years as a Pokemon diehard via Pokemon Home. My goal was to see how feasibly someone who has never touched a Pokemon game prior to this could build a viable competitive team. I booted up the game, put in my birthday, customized my character, forgot to change the fucking OBS settings. The story details in the intro are quite frankly inconsequential. Gun to my head, I could not tell you this character's name. Tatara, please don't kill me, please don't kill me, please, I don't want to die. The game did an okay job of explaining the basics of battling. I could throw a fit about how the doubles tutorial literally just has you click rock slide and ends, but at the end of the day, I recognized experienced players won't want to be forced into extensive tutorials for things they already know about. Luckily, the game adequately guides you to the training room, which goes more in depth with some key battle mechanics, such as move priority, physical versus special moves, terrain, etc. And by etc, I mean plus 4 more things: Mega Evolution, status conditions, contact versus non-contact moves, and weather conditions. You gotta stop somewhere, sure, but arguably this only scratches the surface of what one needs to know about competitive battling. And arguably the most important part of competitive battling, that being the team building and team synergy for both singles and doubles, is completely absent. It doesn't help that the tutorials we do get are so sparse and lackluster. The weather conditions tutorial only covers rain, but if my introduction to rain was this tutorial, I might be fooled into thinking that setting up weather with a move was an optimal strategy over setting it up automatically with an ability. Like the rain tutorial covers Swift Swim, but it doesn't cover Drizzle in your VGC oriented game. Then there's the terrain tutorial, which only covers psychic terrain and nothing else. I'm someone who in general struggles remembering the properties of terrains. I get confused by which ones boost their respective types' damage, what moves they affect, and the benefits each one grants. Like, did you know that grassy terrain halves the power of Bulldoze, Earthquake, and Magnitude? Not every ground move, mind you, just those 3. Needless to say, the terrains tutorial did not cover this. It just covers how psychic terrain protects you from priority moves, but it doesn't even specify that it will only do so if your Pokemon is grounded. This doesn't apply to flying types or levitating Pokemon, but that caveat is never given. Then the tutorial ends by saying terrains have all kinds of effects. Like, no, tell me what they are. This is the type of shit I used to write in my high school papers to avoid admitting I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Like, you're supposed to be teaching me. Do you even know what's going on? And we have liftoff. God, the Challenger sure is beautiful. How'd you end up making the finishing touches, by the way, Smithy? Oh, well, you know, astrophysics can do all sorts of things. Sorry, what? Now you're probably gonna say, but Ryan, if you go to the sub-menu in the bottom right corner and scroll down to the 6th option of gameplay guides, then from there go to advanced battling know-how and select terrains, you can find more information on each terrain, but not information on how grassy terrain interacts with Earthquake, Magnitude, and Bulldoze, and to that I'd say you're right. You can go to this sub-menu and read a bunch of information about battling, but as it stands right now, Champions does an okay job of throwing a bunch bunch of info on the screen, even if most of it is hidden, but a bad job of actually teaching that information in a digestible or interesting way. Imagine you buy a cookbook, but every recipe, rather than being a list of instructions, was just the list of ingredients and nothing else. Like, what new player would come to this game over a far more comprehensive YouTube guide? But that's neither here nor there, you say. Even the best multiplayer games will require the player to seek external guides if they want to truly get better at the game. And you know what? That's also true. Maybe it was wrong of me to assume that this game would efficiently help players learn all the ins and outs of battling. At the end of the day, a new player will eventually learn that they should seek external sources for help anyway. At the end of the day, this game is just here to make building a team in the official competitive format easier, because at the end of the day, not everybody has the time nor patience to jump through the hoops of building a team via Scarlet and Violet's antiquated game mechanics at the end of the day. Oh, would you look at the time? It's 11:59 and this game still fucking sucks. Pokemon Champions is pay to win. Just for the love of God, hear me out for a second. This game isn't pay to win just because you can't get Mega Flawed without having bought Legend ZA first. Having the strongest Mega in the game paywalled is annoying for sure, but it's just one piece of the puzzle here. Pokemon Champions is pay to win because if you have not paid for a Pokemon game prior to this one, you are at an inherent disadvantage when building a team. The only way to adequately explain the fuckery at play here is to take a deep dive into the game's economy. VP is the main currency in Pokemon Champions. It's used to get items and cosmetics from the shop, it can be spent to change your Pokemon's stats, moves, natures, and abilities, and you can use it to buy the Pokemon themselves. VP can typically be acquired by completing dailies and achievements alongside making Battle Pass progress and completing online battles. It's a pretty simple system to understand. As a matter of fact, let's all take a brief moment to admire it before it's tainted by the presence of 6 other in-game currencies, because you know it's coming. Beautiful. Pokemon Champions uses a recruitment system. You can recruit one Pokemon to borrow every 22 hours. However, you can recruit multiple Pokemon to borrow per day through the use of quick coupons. Each quick coupon represents an hour remaining on the counter to your next free roll. So let's say you have 7 hours left till your next free roll. You can use 7 quick coupons to roll immediately. However, the counter will reset for every roll, so you would have to use 22 quick coupons for your next roll. You can also use VP to roll for new recruits, but you have to use all your quick coupons to do so. Same rules apply, but you multiply by 100. So let's say you have 7 hours left to your next free roll, that's 700 VP you have to spend. You also can't re-roll at all until either you select from the current lineup of Pokemon you rolled or just wait the full 22 hours.
Hi, editing Ryan here. So I recruited these Pokemon like a week ago and they're still there, so I don't think that part's true. I think you have to pick from a current lineup of Pokemon, like no matter what, even if like none of them are optimal.
With the limited amount of box space you're given, this will entail a lot of recruiting Pokemon and returning them immediately if you're trying to build a team of specific Pokemon. I would know. After learning that the game wouldn't provide me with a sample team that is even slightly good, nor would it tutorialize making a viable team in the first place, I decided to look towards the internet to reference sample rain teams that used Mega Meganium. Meganium is my favorite Pokemon, and I had been meaning to try out their new Mega Soul ability. The team I was referring to had Archaludon, Mousehold, Pelipper, Basculegion, Meganium, and Sinistra. All I needed to roll was a Sinistra, Archaludon, Mousehold, Pelipper, and Meganium, considering I was fine replacing Basculegion with the Mega Starmie I already had. I started using my quick coupons, but after multiple rolls I wasn't able to get anything on the team I was trying to build to show up. Realizing I was wasting my time and resources, I decided to try a new strategy. In the achievements portion of the sub-menu under trainer achievements, if you scroll down far enough, you can find the Move Fiend achievements. These award you with affinity tickets, each with a respective type. You can use these tickets while recruiting Pokemon to increase the odds of Pokemon with that specific type showing up. Considering I was building a rain comp, I needed needed a Pelipper so I could set up rain through drizzle while providing tailwind utility to my team. Therefore, I needed the water affinity ticket, which required me to use water type moves 50 times just for a chance at getting a Pelipper. This took me over an hour of mindless grinding and losing too, because intentionally trying to use water moves even at the most inopportune times is not conducive to a lot of victories, but damn it, I did it. I completed the challenge, all for two measly water affinity tickets, 2 measly chances at rolling a Pelipper, and when I eventually tried, do I even need to tell you that the Pelipper didn't show up? But you know, that wasn't the worst part. I can deal with mindless grinding for another hour or so, considering I've played Pokemon games before, so I'm pretty used to it. But when I went back to the trainer achievements, I was floored. Baffled even to find that the only way to get more water affinity tickets was to use water type moves an additional 250 times in online battles. That is 5 times what was expected of me the first time. This is the only way for players who have never touched a Pokemon game to build their team. Most new players, to stand a fighting chance, are going to have to look up teams online and try to replicate their Pokemon stats, moves, and abilities in-game. Experimenting for yourself in this game straight up is not worth it, and the game does not encourage it. For example, when you borrow a Pokemon, you're able to use them for 7 days, but you can't change any of their stats, abilities, natures, or moves. You can't even see their moves. How is one supposed to know if a Pokemon is worth it to recruit if they don't know the moves it can learn, can't experiment with what the Pokemon can do, and the sample sets given to these Pokemon in-game are completely unusable? It's simple. You go to Pokemon Showdown to try out and experiment with teams and come back to the official game later. The same thing we've been doing for 15 years with no innovation, because the alternative is always time wasting. I gave up, by the way. I kept burning quick coupons only for the Pelipper to never show up at the recruit ranch, and when I started using VP, I had to stop because VP is far too valuable to waste on gambling. You use VP to change your stats, moves, ability, and nature, and yeah, it gets kind of fucking pricey after a while, especially when you're building an entire team from scratch instead of changing one Pokemon. But Ryan, I hear you say, if building a team from scratch is taking too long, then why don't you just use a sample team instead? Oh, you mean the sample teams that don't exist? That's right, sample teams, the easiest way for players in the past to have competitively viable teams by simply inputting code shared amongst the community, were removed from the game, meant to make competitive battling easier for new players. Instead, we get replica teams. If you input the code for a replica team, it will automatically fail unless you already have all the Pokemon present on the team. It will transfer over every Pokemon's EVs, moves, and abilities for free. Just kidding, you have to use your hard-earned VP to train your Pokemon up to the level of someone else's team. Also, you have to own every Pokemon if you want to train every Pokemon from the team to reflect the Pokemon on the replica team. If you recruit a Pokemon free for 7 days but don't pay the 2,500 VP to keep them on the team, you can't train them because, in case you forgot, you have to own a Pokemon to train them. All of this to build a team for a game which is just a watered down version of every mainline Pokemon game within the past I don't even know how long anymore. Only 2 battle modes in the game, all about battling. Battle Stadium singles and doubles, nothing else.
This game is all about battles.
Literally all I wanted from the game was custom rule sets, a way to potentially host different servers to finally cater to an extensive variety of competitive players. Smogon's tiering system could be implemented in these custom rules. 6v6 singles, doubles, random battles, 1v1 singles, Little Cup, past generations metas. You might think it was naive of me to expect this game to be an official version of Pokemon Showdown, but also why the hell shouldn't I? A game like this will always be fighting an uphill battle, considering Pokemon Showdown has been a perfect battle simulator for like 15 years at this point. Should the official Pokemon companies attempt at a free-to-play free-to-play game focused solely on battling not attempt to surpass every aspect of Showdown? You can't even play 6v6 in this game. Why is there so little game in this game? Not even like any mini games or side content? I could go on for hours about this game. Except I couldn't because there's no content here. I'm just gonna leave the community with a couple questions. This is mainly for the people who are hating on those comparing this game to Showdown. What about this game is better than Showdown? What about this game makes competitive Pokemon easier to get into than Showdown? If the answer is just the animation, I think they've kinda failed. And you know what? Usually I wouldn't pose these questions for just any Pokemon game, but so much of this game's identity revolves around being the official Pokemon battle simulator. But not only is it lacking a lot of the basic stuff a good battle simulator would have, it's designed around a bullshit gacha game system that makes acquiring Pokemon incredibly difficult if you haven't already shelled out $60 to $70 in the past. But even if you view this game as less of a simulator but more as a game, the moment-to-moment gameplay is so bare bones and simplistic. There's so little content or variety here that the game is kind of left in this weird middle ground. The only reason to play this is if you want to play the current official meta on the current official console. If you want to search from a database of Pokemon which ones can use a specific move, use Showdown. If you want to calculate damage and adjust your EVs accordingly, use Showdown. If you want to use other people's teams, play Showdown or Scarlet and Violet. If you want to play fun minigames, play Stadium. Okay, the minigames aren't that big of a deal. If you've listened to a single thing that I've said in this video, if you hate games wasting your time, if you care about the growth of the competitive Pokemon community, if you like a competitive meta with an emphasis on variety and player expression, don't stand for this, because remember, if Pokemon Champions doesn't hate babies, why isn't Clefairy in the game?